The Row. There is a place on the edge of San Francisco Bay where time moves differently. Not faster. Not slower. But heavier. San Quentin State Prison. From the outside, it sits quietly along the water in California. Historic, aging, almost unremarkable at first glance. But inside, behind its walls, exists one of the most well-known death row units in the United States. A place where the sentence is not just imprisonment, but waiting. Waiting for a process that can take decades. Waiting for decisions that move slowly through layers of appeals. Waiting in an environment where time does not lead to release, but to uncertainty. And in many cases, waiting without knowing if an end will ever come. San Quentin has housed California's male death row population for decades. According to publicly available records and reports, hundreds of individuals have been held there under death sentences, though the number has changed over time due to legal developments and policy shifts. But what defines death row is not just the sentence. It is the experience. The structure of daily life is different from other prison units. Individuals are typically housed in single cells. Movement is controlled. Interaction is limited. And the environment is designed for separation. According to reports and official information, many individuals on death row spend a significant portion of their day inside their cells. Not necessarily in complete isolation, but in conditions that restrict movement and contact. Meals are delivered. Time outside the cell is scheduled and limited. Routines exist, but they are tightly controlled. The physical structure of San Quentin reflects its history. Parts of the facility date back to the 19th century. Over time, sections have been modified, expanded, and repurposed. But the aging infrastructure remains a defining feature. Narrow walkways. Concrete and steel. Units built for containment, not comfort. And within those units, time stretches. For many individuals, the legal process continues for years. According to public records and legal analyses, death penalty cases in California involve multiple layers of appeals. State courts. Federal courts. Reviews that examine not only the original conviction, but the process itself. This means that a death sentence does not immediately lead to execution. Instead, it leads to an extended period of legal review. And during that time, individuals remain on death row. The psychological impact of this waiting has been widely discussed in reports and studies. The combination of isolation, uncertainty, and long-term confinement creates a unique environment. Not defined by immediate outcomes, but by prolonged anticipation. Some individuals adapt by creating routines. Reading, writing, exercising within limited space. Others struggle with the mental weight of uncertainty. Because unlike a fixed sentence, death row does not offer a clear timeline. It offers a process. One that can extend for decades. Staff working within this environment operate under specific protocols. According to publicly available information, managing a death row unit requires a high level of control and consistency. Movement must be monitored. Security must be maintained. And procedures must be followed closely. But even within that structure, the human element remains. Interactions between staff and inmates are shaped by the environment. Professional, controlled, but also influenced by the reality of the setting. A place where every individual has been given the most serious sentence available under the law. San Quentin is also shaped by changes in policy. In recent years, California has taken steps that affect how the death penalty is applied. According to official announcements, executions have been halted, and the future of the death penalty in the state has been the subject of ongoing debate. This has created a new layer of uncertainty. Individuals remain on death row, but the outcome of their sentences is no longer as clearly defined as it once was. They continue to wait. But for what, exactly, is not always clear. This uncertainty changes the nature of the experience. The sentence remains, but the process evolves. And within that space, time continues to pass. San Quentin, in this way, is not just a prison. It is a place where legal systems, human experience, and time intersect. Where decisions made in courtrooms echo for decades. Where the concept of punishment becomes tied to waiting. And where the meaning of a sentence is shaped not only by its outcome, but by the experience of living through it. Because on death row, the most defining element is not the past. It is not even the future. It is the present. The daily reality of existing in a system that moves slowly, deliberately, and sometimes without resolution. And that is where the story begins. The weight of waiting. On death row at San Quentin, time is not measured the way it is anywhere else. It is not counted in days or months alone. It is experienced in repetition. In routine. In the slow passage of years that feel both continuous and suspended at the same time. For many individuals, the sentence itself is only the beginning. What follows is a process defined by appeals, legal reviews, and prolonged uncertainty. According to publicly available legal information, death penalty cases in California often move through multiple layers of the judicial system. Direct appeals are followed by state habeas corpus petitions, then federal reviews. Each stage can take years. Sometimes more. And during all of that time, individuals remain in the same place. The same cell. The same unit. The same environment. San Quentin's death row has long been one of the largest in the United States. According to reports, hundreds of individuals have been housed there over time, each at a different stage in the legal process, but all sharing the same fundamental experience. Waiting. Daily life is structured, but limited. Individuals are typically housed in single cells, with movement carefully controlled. Meals are delivered. Recreation, when permitted, takes place under supervision, often in small, enclosed spaces. Contact with others is restricted compared to general population units. The environment is not defined by constant activity, but by controlled stillness. And within that stillness, time expands. For some, routine becomes a way to maintain stability. Reading, writing, exercising in confined space, following a daily pattern that gives structure to otherwise repetitive days. According to accounts and reports, routine can provide a sense of control, even in an environment where control is limited. For others, the experience is more difficult. Because uncertainty is not just a concept on death row. It is a constant presence. Unlike fixed sentences, where release dates can be calculated, death row operates differently. The legal process determines what happens next, and that process does not follow a predictable timeline. Delays can occur. Cases can be revisited. Decisions can be appealed. This means that individuals do not always know what the future holds. Only that it is not immediate. The psychological impact of this kind of uncertainty has been widely discussed in research and public reports. Long-term confinement, combined with the absence of a clear outcome, can affect how individuals think, how they cope, and how they experience time itself. Some describe the experience as being suspended between two realities. Not part of the outside world. But not moving toward a defined end either. Just existing within a process. San Quentin's physical environment reinforces this experience. The facility is one of the oldest prisons in California, with sections that reflect decades of use. According to publicly available information, parts of death row are housed in units that have been criticized for their age and condition. Narrow spaces. Limited natural light. Structures designed for containment rather than long-term habitation. These physical conditions shape daily life. They influence movement, interaction, and the overall atmosphere of the environment. Over time, they become part of the experience itself. Staff working within death row operate under strict protocols. According to public information, managing a death row unit requires maintaining a high level of security and consistency. Every movement is monitored. Every procedure is defined. But within that structure, there is also routine. Officers walk the same tiers. Follow the same schedules. Interact with the same individuals over extended periods of time. This creates a different kind of environment. One where familiarity exists, but within a framework of control. The relationship between staff and inmates is shaped by this reality. Professional, structured, and influenced by the unique nature of the setting. Because death row is not just another unit. It is a place where every individual has been sentenced under the most serious penalty available under the law. And that context shapes everything. At the same time, the broader legal landscape has been changing. According to official announcements and public records, California has paused executions in recent years. Policies have shifted. Debates about the future of the death penalty continue at both state and national levels. This has created a situation where individuals remain on death row, but without the immediate possibility of execution. The sentence exists. But its enforcement is uncertain. And that adds another layer to the experience. Because waiting is no longer tied to a clear outcome. It becomes indefinite. For some, this creates a different kind of psychological weight. Not the anticipation of a specific event, but the absence of resolution. A process that continues, without a defined end point. Over time, this environment shapes how individuals perceive their situation. Some focus on the present, building routines that make each day manageable. Others focus on the legal process, following developments in their cases, holding on to the possibility of change. And some struggle with the uncertainty itself, finding it difficult to reconcile a sentence that exists without a clear conclusion. According to reports and accounts, mental health plays a significant role in this environment. Access to services exists, but the challenges of long-term confinement remain. The combination of isolation, uncertainty, and extended time can affect well-being in complex ways. San Quentin, in this sense, is not just a place where sentences are carried out. It is a place where sentences are lived through. Day by day. Year by year. Within a system that moves forward, but not always in a straight line. And as that system continues to evolve, the experience of death row evolves with it. Not defined by a single moment, but by the accumulation of time. Because on death row, the weight of the sentence is not only in its outcome. It is in the waiting. Between sentence and system. Death row at San Quentin is often understood as the final stage of the justice process. A place where sentences are carried out. A place associated with finality. But the reality is more complex. Because what happens inside San Quentin is not just the result of a single decision. It is the result of an entire system working over time. Courts, laws, procedures, policies, and oversight mechanisms all intersect here. And when they do, the outcome is not always immediate or straightforward. Instead of finality, what often exists is continuation. A sentence is issued. A process begins. And that process can last for decades. According to publicly available legal information, death penalty cases in California involve one of the most extensive review processes in the justice system. Direct appeals are automatic. These appeals examine the trial itself, ensuring that procedures were followed correctly and that the conviction meets legal standards. But that is only the beginning. After direct appeals, additional legal steps follow. Habeas corpus petitions allow for further examination of the case, including claims related to legal representation, evidence, or constitutional issues. These petitions can be filed at both the state and federal level. Each stage requires time. Time for preparation. Time for review. Time for decisions. And at each stage, new developments can occur. Cases can be upheld. They can be challenged. They can be sent back for further review. This layered system is designed to ensure accuracy and fairness in the most serious cases. But it also means that the process moves slowly. Very slowly. For individuals on death row, this creates a unique position. They are sentenced. But the sentence is not immediately carried out. They are within the system. But the system is still processing their case. This creates a space between decision and outcome. A space defined by time. San Quentin becomes the place where that time is experienced. Years pass while legal processes continue. Documents move through courts. Arguments are presented and reviewed. And during all of that, daily life inside the prison continues. The same routines. The same environment. The same waiting. This intersection between legal process and lived experience is what defines death row at San Quentin. It is not just a legal category. It is a reality shaped by how the system operates over time. The role of the courts in this process is central. According to public records, California's judicial system has been responsible for reviewing death penalty cases with a level of detail that reflects the seriousness of the sentence. This includes examining trial records, reviewing evidence, and ensuring that legal standards are met. But the complexity of these cases means that the process is not quick. Each case is unique. Each requires careful analysis. And each moves through a system that handles many cases at once. This contributes to delays. Backlogs develop. Cases wait for review. Time extends. And as time extends, the experience of death row changes. Because what was once intended as a step toward a final outcome becomes, in practice, a long-term condition. According to reports and public discussions, this has led to broader questions about the role of the death penalty within the system. Not only about its application, but about its function when the process takes decades to complete. If a sentence is issued, but not carried out for many years, what does that sentence represent? Is it a legal outcome? A symbolic decision? Or a process without a clear conclusion? These questions are part of an ongoing debate, one that extends beyond San Quentin itself. Policy changes have added another layer to this discussion. In recent years, California has taken steps that affect how the death penalty is implemented. According to official announcements, executions have been paused, and the state has explored changes to how death row is managed. This has altered the landscape. Individuals remain on death row. But the likelihood and timing of execution are no longer defined in the same way. The system continues. But its direction is less certain. For those inside, this creates a different kind of reality. The sentence remains. The process continues. But the outcome is unclear. This uncertainty becomes part of daily life. Not just waiting for a legal decision, but waiting within a system that is itself evolving. San Quentin, as a physical place, reflects this complexity. It is not only a facility. It is a point where multiple systems intersect. Legal. Institutional. Human. Each influencing the other. The structure of the prison, the operation of the courts, and the experience of individuals all connect within this space. And that connection shapes what death row becomes. Not just a place of punishment. But a place of process. A place where decisions are extended over time. A place where outcomes are delayed. A place where the meaning of a sentence is shaped not only by what is decided, but by how long it takes to reach that decision. For staff working within this environment, the system presents its own challenges. Managing a unit where individuals remain for decades requires consistency. Procedures must be followed. Security must be maintained. And operations must continue regardless of how long individuals stay. This creates a different kind of operational environment. Not one focused on short-term management. But one built around long-term continuity. Officers and staff become familiar with the structure, the routines, and the individuals within the system. The passage of time affects not only those incarcerated, but those who work within the facility as well. Because in a place where people remain for years, the environment itself becomes stable in one sense, and complex in another. Stable in its routines. Complex in its implications. The broader impact of this system extends beyond the prison. Legal decisions made in death penalty cases influence how justice is understood. Public debates about the death penalty reflect differing views on fairness, accountability, and the role of punishment. San Quentin becomes part of that conversation. Not as an abstract concept, but as a real place where these issues are lived. Where the consequences of policy are experienced daily. And where the interaction between law and life becomes visible. In the end, death row at San Quentin exists between two realities. The sentence that has been given. And the system that continues to process it. Between decision and outcome. Between certainty and uncertainty. And within that space, time continues to pass. Not bringing resolution. But extending the experience. Because here, the true cost is not measured in a single moment. It is measured in years. In waiting. In process. In the reality of living inside a system that never fully stops. The psychology of a sentence without an end. On death row at San Quentin, the most powerful force is not the walls, the bars, or even the sentence itself. It is the mind. Because when time stretches across years without a clear endpoint, the experience of confinement changes. It is no longer defined only by physical restriction, but by how individuals process uncertainty, repetition, and the absence of resolution. According to publicly available research and reports, long-term confinement in highly controlled environments can have significant psychological effects. When combined with the unique conditions of death row, extended legal processes, limited movement, and uncertain outcomes, those effects become more complex. The structure of daily life is designed to be consistent. Meals arrive at scheduled times. Movement is controlled. Access to activities is limited and regulated. This consistency can create a sense of order. But over time, it can also create monotony. Days begin to resemble one another. The same space. The same routine. The same sequence of events repeated again and again. Without variation, time becomes difficult to distinguish. Hours blend together. Days lose their individuality. Weeks pass without clear markers. For some individuals, this repetition becomes a way to cope. Establishing routines. Reading, writing, exercising within the limits of the cell, can create structure where little exists. It becomes a way to maintain focus, to create small goals within a larger environment that offers few. But not everyone experiences it the same way. For others, repetition can intensify the sense of confinement. Without change, the environment can feel static. And when combined with uncertainty about the future, that static feeling can become heavy. The legal process continues, but its timeline is uncertain. Appeals may take years. Decisions may be delayed. Outcomes may change. This creates a psychological condition that is different from serving a fixed sentence. In a fixed sentence, time moves toward a known point. Release may be far away, but it exists. There is a direction. On death row, direction is less clear. Time moves, but it does not always lead to resolution. This can affect how individuals think about the future. Some focus on their legal cases, following developments, working with attorneys, and holding on to the possibility of change. For them, the process becomes a focal point, a way to connect the present to a potential outcome. Others shift their focus to the present, concentrating on daily routines, managing time in smaller segments. Not looking too far ahead, but dealing with what is immediately in front of them. And some struggle with the uncertainty itself. Because when the outcome of a sentence is not immediate, and not clearly defined, it creates a different kind of mental weight. Not the anticipation of a specific event, but the absence of clarity. According to reports and studies, long-term uncertainty can affect mental well-being. It can influence mood, concentration, and the ability to maintain a stable sense of time and purpose. Isolation, even when not absolute, also plays a role. Individuals on death row typically have limited interaction compared to general population units. While communication exists, it is restricted. Movement is controlled. Contact is structured. This reduced interaction can affect how individuals relate to others and to their environment. Human beings are naturally social. Interaction provides stimulation, perspective, and connection. When that interaction is limited, the mind adapts. Some individuals turn inward, focusing on thoughts, memories, or personal reflection. Others seek connection through available means, letters, limited conversations, or shared routines within the constraints of the environment. But over time, reduced interaction can change how the world is experienced. The outside world becomes more distant. Time feels less connected to external events. Life is defined more by internal processes than by external change. The physical environment of San Quentin reinforces this experience. The structure of the facility, with its aging units and confined spaces, creates a setting where movement is limited and sensory variation is reduced. Light, sound, and space are all controlled elements. This can affect perception. Without variation, the environment becomes predictable. And while predictability can reduce certain forms of stress, it can also reduce stimulation. Over long periods, this balance becomes significant. The role of staff within this environment is also shaped by these psychological conditions. Correctional officers and support staff operate within a system that requires consistency and control. Their interactions with inmates are structured, professional, and influenced by the nature of the setting. But they are also part of the environment. They move through the same spaces. Follow the same routines. Work within the same system that defines daily life on death row. According to public reports, working in high-security environments can carry its own psychological demands. Maintaining awareness, managing routine, and operating within a controlled setting requires focus and consistency. This creates a shared environment, though experienced differently by those inside it. Another factor that shapes the psychological experience of death row is time itself. Not just its passage, but its perception. When time is structured by routine rather than change, it can feel both slow and fast. Days may feel long in the moment, but when looked back upon, they can seem compressed. Months pass. Years pass. And yet, the environment remains largely the same. This creates a sense of continuity that is difficult to break. Without significant external events, time becomes internal. Measured not by what happens, but by how it is experienced. This internalization of time is one of the defining aspects of long-term confinement. It shifts focus from external milestones to internal processes. From what is happening to how it is felt. And on death row, where the external outcome is uncertain, this shift becomes even more pronounced. The concept of hope also takes on a different meaning. In some cases, hope is tied to the legal process. The possibility of a successful appeal, a change in sentence, or a shift in policy. In other cases, hope is redefined. Not as a future event, but as a way of managing the present. Maintaining stability. Finding purpose in routine. Holding on to a sense of identity within a controlled environment. Because in a setting where external control is limited, internal control becomes more important. How individuals think, how they respond, how they structure their time, these become central to their experience. San Quentin's death row, in this way, is not only a physical environment. It is a psychological one. A place where the mind becomes the primary space of activity. Where thoughts, routines, and perception shape daily life as much as physical conditions. And where the true weight of the sentence is experienced not only in confinement, but in the ongoing process of waiting. Because when a sentence does not have a clear endpoint, the experience of that sentence changes. It becomes less about a final outcome, and more about the continuous present. A present defined by repetition, by uncertainty, and by the psychological effort required to navigate both. The people within the system. San Quentin's death row is often described through its structure, its rules, and its legal processes. But within that structure are people. Individuals whose lives are shaped by the system, and others whose roles are to maintain it. And it is within this human layer that the reality of death row becomes more complex. Because a system is not only defined by policies and procedures. It is defined by how people exist within it. The individuals held on death row arrive there through a legal process that has already determined the most serious outcome under the law. Their cases have moved through trial, sentencing, and initial appeals. By the time they reach San Quentin, they are entering a system designed for long-term containment. But once inside, their experiences are not identical. Each individual brings a different background, a different history, and a different response to the environment. Some adapt to the structure, finding ways to create routine and stability. Others struggle with the psychological weight of confinement and uncertainty. According to publicly available reports and accounts, daily life is shaped by limitations, but also by small choices. How time is spent within the cell. What routines are created. How individuals engage with available activities. These choices may seem minor from the outside, but within a controlled environment, they become significant. Because they represent agency. A way to maintain some level of control in a setting where most control is removed. Communication is another aspect that shapes the human experience on death row. Interaction is limited, but not absent. Individuals may communicate through conversations across tiers, through written correspondence, or through structured interactions. According to reports, letters play an important role for many individuals. They provide a connection to the outside world, a way to maintain relationships, and a way to express thoughts over time. For some, writing becomes a central part of daily life. Reading also becomes significant. Access to books and written material allows individuals to engage with ideas beyond the immediate environment. It creates mental movement in a place where physical movement is restricted. These activities, reading, writing, routine, form part of how individuals navigate long-term confinement. But they do not eliminate the challenges. The environment remains controlled. The future remains uncertain. And the psychological demands remain present. At the same time, staff within San Quentin operate within their own structured roles. Correctional officers, medical staff, and administrative personnel are responsible for maintaining order, ensuring safety, and managing daily operations. Their work requires consistency, attention, and adherence to established procedures. According to publicly available information, working in a high-security environment like death row involves both routine and unpredictability. While daily schedules are structured, situations can change. Staff must be prepared to respond, to manage, and to maintain control. Over time, staff become familiar with the environment. The layout of the facility. The routines of the unit. The individuals they interact with. This familiarity creates a working dynamic that is shaped by both structure and experience. Interactions between staff and inmates are influenced by this dynamic. They are professional, regulated, and guided by policy. But they are also human interactions, occurring within a shared environment. A place where both groups operate under defined roles, but within the same physical space. This shared environment does not remove boundaries, but it does create a form of continuity. Day after day. Year after year. The same routines. The same structure. And within that, relationships, however limited, develop in ways that reflect the setting. Another layer of the human experience is the role of legal representation. Attorneys continue to work on cases long after sentencing. According to public records, death penalty cases involve extended legal processes, and attorneys play a central role in navigating those processes. For individuals on death row, communication with legal counsel is one of the primary connections to the outside system. Updates on cases, discussions of legal strategy, and ongoing representation are part of the experience. But this process is often slow. Legal reviews take time. Courts move at their own pace. Decisions are not immediate. And during that time, individuals continue to live within the same environment. Family connections also remain an important part of the human experience. Visits, when possible, provide direct contact with the outside world. According to publicly available information, visiting procedures are structured and regulated, but they allow for interaction that is otherwise limited. For many individuals, these visits are significant. They provide continuity, a sense of connection, a reminder of life beyond the prison. But access can be affected by distance, scheduling, and logistical challenges. San Quentin's location, while closer to urban areas than some other prisons, still requires travel, coordination, and time. For families, maintaining regular contact can be difficult. And when contact is limited, the sense of separation increases. This separation is not only physical. It is temporal. Life outside continues to move. Events happen. Time progresses. While inside, the environment remains largely the same. This difference creates a gap between two realities. One that moves forward. And one that remains contained. For individuals on death row, this gap can shape how they perceive both time and identity. Who they were before incarceration. Who they are within the system. And how those identities connect, or do not connect, over time. The concept of identity becomes more complex in long-term confinement. Without the usual markers of daily life, work, social interaction, personal movement, identity is shaped differently. Through routine. Through thought. Through limited interaction. And through the ongoing process of existing within the system. For staff, identity is shaped by role and responsibility. Maintaining order. Ensuring safety. Operating within defined procedures. But over time, the environment can also influence perspective. Working in a place defined by long-term confinement and serious sentences requires a level of consistency and focus that is different from many other environments. This creates its own set of challenges and adaptations. San Quentin, in this sense, is not just a place where individuals are held. It is a place where people, on both sides of the system, navigate a shared environment under different conditions. Where roles are clearly defined, but experiences are shaped by the same structure. And where the human element remains present, even within a system designed for control. Because no matter how structured a system becomes, it is still experienced by people. Individuals with thoughts, routines, and responses to the environment around them. And it is through these experiences that the reality of death row is fully understood. Not only as a legal condition, but as a human one. A system in transition. San Quentin's death row has long been defined by one idea. Finality. A place where the most serious sentences are carried out after a long legal process. A place associated with a clear, if distant, outcome. But in recent years, that definition has begun to change. Not suddenly. Not completely. But in ways that have altered how the system functions, and how it is experienced by those inside it. Because the death penalty in California is no longer operating in the same way it once did. According to publicly available information and official announcements, executions in California have been halted in recent years. This decision, along with ongoing legal and political debate, has reshaped the landscape of death row. The sentence still exists. The legal framework remains in place. But the outcome that once defined the system has been paused. And when the outcome is paused, the experience changes. For individuals on death row, this creates a different kind of reality. The sentence is still active, but its enforcement is uncertain. The legal process continues, but the final stage is no longer clearly defined. This transforms death row from a place of anticipated finality into a place of indefinite waiting. A system still operating, but without a clear conclusion. This shift has raised broader questions about the role of death row itself. If executions are not taking place, what purpose does death row serve? Is it still a step in a process? Or has it become a long-term condition? According to reports and public discussions, these questions are part of an ongoing debate. Legal experts, policymakers, and advocacy groups have all contributed to discussions about the future of the death penalty in California. Some argue for reform. Others for abolition. And some for maintaining the current structure with adjustments. But regardless of perspective, the system as it exists today reflects change. And that change is experienced directly inside San Quentin. The daily routines remain. Cells. Schedules. Controlled movement. But the context around those routines has shifted. Time on death row is no longer tied to a clear endpoint. It becomes open-ended. This affects how individuals perceive their situation. Previously, the process moved toward a defined outcome, even if that outcome was years away. Now, the process continues without that same sense of direction. And when direction is unclear, the experience of time changes. It becomes less about progression, and more about continuation. The legal system continues to operate within this evolving framework. Appeals still move through courts. Cases are still reviewed. Legal representation remains active. But the broader context in which these processes occur has shifted. Because the final stage, the execution itself, is no longer part of the immediate system. This creates a gap between sentence and outcome. A gap that did not exist in the same way before. And within that gap, the system continues to function. San Quentin, as a facility, reflects this transition. It remains operational. It continues to house individuals on death row. It maintains the structure and procedures that have defined it for decades. But it also exists within a system that is changing. This creates a layered reality. The physical environment remains largely the same. But the meaning of that environment is evolving. For staff, this transition brings its own challenges. Procedures must still be followed. Security must still be maintained. Operations must continue without disruption. But the broader context in which they work is shifting. Policies change. Expectations evolve. The long-term role of the facility is being reconsidered. Adapting to these changes requires consistency within uncertainty. Maintaining a system that is itself being redefined. This is not a simple process. It involves coordination between institutions. Communication across different levels of government. And adjustments that take time to implement. According to public reports, transitions within large systems are rarely immediate. They occur gradually, often unevenly, and sometimes with setbacks. San Quentin's death row is part of that process. A place where change is happening, but not all at once. A place where the past structure still exists, even as the future is being debated. The broader implications of this transition extend beyond the prison itself. They influence how the death penalty is understood. How justice is applied. And how systems respond when long-standing practices are reconsidered. California's approach to the death penalty is being observed by other states and jurisdictions. Changes in policy, legal decisions, and public opinion all contribute to a wider conversation. San Quentin becomes a focal point within that conversation. Not because it is unique, but because it is representative. It shows what happens when a system begins to change while still in operation. When existing structures remain in place, but their purpose is being re-evaluated. And when individuals continue to live within that structure, even as its future is uncertain. For those inside, this means adapting to a system that is no longer fixed. The sentence remains. The environment remains. But the direction of the system is no longer as clear as it once was. This creates a different kind of psychological experience. Not just waiting for an outcome, but existing within a system that is itself in transition. A system that continues to function, but is no longer fully defined by its original purpose. And as that transition continues, one question becomes central. What will death row become? Will it remain as it is, shaped by its past? Will it evolve into something different? Or will it be replaced entirely? The answers to these questions are not yet final. They are part of an ongoing process. A process that involves law, policy, and public debate. But while that process continues, life inside San Quentin continues as well. The same routines. The same environment. The same passage of time. Because even as systems change, daily reality does not always change at the same pace. And that gap between system and experience is where the true impact of transition is felt. Not in policy alone, but in the lived reality of those within it. The meaning of the sentence. At San Quentin, the sentence is written in legal terms. Clear. Formal. Final. But what that sentence means, is something else entirely. Because once it moves beyond the courtroom and into daily life on death row, its meaning begins to change. It is no longer just a legal decision. It becomes an experience. One shaped not only by what was decided, but by how it is lived over time. And on death row, that time is not simple. According to publicly available legal frameworks, a death sentence represents the most severe penalty within the justice system. It is intended to mark a final outcome, reached after trial and review. But in practice, especially in California, that outcome is not immediate. Instead, the sentence enters a process. Appeals. Reviews. Deliberations. Each stage extending the timeline. Each step adding distance between the original decision and its potential conclusion. And as that distance grows, the nature of the sentence changes. Because it is no longer defined only by its final stage. It is defined by the time in between. San Quentin is where that in-between exists. A place where the sentence is present every day, but its conclusion remains uncertain. A place where individuals live not at the end of a process, but inside it. This creates a unique reality. The sentence is fixed. But the experience is not. It evolves over time. In the early years, attention may focus on the legal process. Understanding appeals, working with attorneys, following developments in the case. The system still feels active, moving, progressing. But as years pass, that sense of progression can change. Delays occur. Cases slow. Outcomes become less immediate. And the sentence begins to feel less like a path forward, and more like a condition of existence. According to reports and research, this shift can affect how individuals perceive both time and purpose. When the future is not clearly defined, focus often turns inward. Toward routine. Toward daily structure. Toward ways of managing the present. Because the present becomes the only consistent element. The past is fixed. The future is uncertain. But the present continues, day after day. This is where the meaning of the sentence is experienced most directly. Not in the courtroom. Not in the legal documents. But in the daily reality of living within it. San Quentin's environment reinforces this experience. The physical structure, the routines, the controlled movement, all contribute to a setting where change is limited. Where variation is minimal. And where time is marked more by repetition than by progression. Over time, this creates a different relationship with the sentence itself. It is no longer only something that will happen. It is something that is being lived every day. And this raises a deeper question. What is the purpose of a sentence when its outcome is uncertain? Is it still defined by its intended conclusion? Or is it defined by the experience it creates over time? According to public discussions and legal debates, this question is central to the broader conversation about the death penalty. Not only whether it should exist, but how it functions in practice. Because when a system produces long-term waiting instead of immediate outcomes, the nature of punishment changes. It becomes less about a single moment, and more about duration. Years spent in a controlled environment. Years spent within a process that continues without clear resolution. And in that duration, the sentence takes on new meaning. It becomes part of identity. Not only something assigned, but something lived. Individuals on death row are not only defined by their cases. They are also shaped by the environment, by the routines, and by the passage of time within the system. This does not erase the legal reality of their sentence. But it adds another layer to it. A human layer. One that exists beyond legal definitions. One that reflects how systems operate over extended periods. For staff, the meaning of the sentence is also experienced differently. Their role is not to interpret the sentence, but to manage the environment in which it exists. To maintain order, ensure safety, and follow procedures that apply regardless of the length of time individuals remain. But over years of working within the same environment, the reality of long-term confinement becomes part of their experience as well. They see the passage of time. The continuity of routine. The system operating day after day, year after year. And within that, the sentence becomes something more than a legal outcome. It becomes part of the structure of the environment itself. San Quentin, in this way, is not only a place where sentences are carried out. It is a place where sentences are redefined by time. Where the original decision remains unchanged, but its meaning evolves through lived experience. Where the system continues to function, even as its purpose is questioned and its future is debated. And where individuals exist within a space that is both fixed and uncertain at the same time. The sentence does not change. But everything around it does. Time passes. Policies shift. Perspectives evolve. And within that movement, the meaning of the sentence continues to develop. Because in the end, a sentence is not only what is written. It is what is lived. And at San Quentin, what is lived is not a single moment. It is years. Years of waiting. Years of routine. Years of existing within a system that continues to move, even when the outcome does not. And that is what defines death row. Not just the sentence itself. But what it becomes over time. What remains. At San Quentin, after the routines, after the years, after the legal processes that stretch across decades, something remains. Not just the sentence. Not just the system. But the impact. Because death row is not only defined by what it is meant to do. It is defined by what it becomes over time. And what it becomes is shaped by how long it lasts, how it is experienced, and how it changes the people within it. For many individuals, time on death row is not measured in simple numbers. It is measured in stages. The early years, where the legal process feels active. The middle years, where delays begin to extend that process. And the later years, where time itself becomes the dominant experience. According to publicly available information and reports, the length of time individuals spend on death row in California has often extended far beyond initial expectations. Legal safeguards, appeals, and procedural requirements are designed to ensure accuracy and fairness. But they also create duration. And that duration becomes the experience. Over time, individuals adapt in different ways. Some focus on maintaining routine, structuring each day to create stability within a controlled environment. Reading, writing, and personal discipline become tools for managing time. These routines may seem simple, but within a setting defined by repetition, they take on greater meaning. They create order. They create purpose. They create continuity. Others experience time differently. The repetition can become overwhelming. The uncertainty can become difficult to manage. The lack of resolution can affect how the future is perceived. Because without a clear endpoint, time does not lead somewhere. It continues. And when time continues without resolution, it changes how it is felt. San Quentin's death row reflects this reality in its structure. The same cells. The same routines. The same environment repeated over years. The physical setting does not evolve at the same pace as time itself. And this creates a contrast between the passage of years and the stability of the environment. Time moves forward. The environment remains largely the same. This contrast becomes part of the experience. For staff, this continuity also has an impact. Working in an environment where individuals remain for extended periods creates a different kind of professional experience. It is not defined by constant change, but by long-term consistency. The same procedures. The same structure. The same environment over time. But within that consistency, the passage of years is still visible. Individuals age. Cases progress. The system continues to operate. And for staff, maintaining stability within that ongoing process requires focus and adaptation. San Quentin, as a system, continues to function within this framework. Legal processes move forward. Policies evolve. Discussions about the future of the death penalty continue. But within the facility, daily life remains structured by routine. This creates a dual reality. A system that is changing at a broader level. And an environment that remains consistent at the daily level. For individuals on death row, this duality shapes how the sentence is experienced. The legal system may shift. Policies may change. But daily life continues within the same structure. And that structure becomes the constant. Over time, this raises broader questions. Not only about the death penalty itself, but about the nature of long-term confinement. What does it mean to hold individuals in a system where the outcome is uncertain? What is the role of time in a sentence that does not move toward a clear conclusion? And how should systems respond when the experience of a sentence becomes different from its original intent? According to public discussions and legal debates, these questions remain active. They are part of ongoing conversations about justice, fairness, and the role of punishment in modern systems. San Quentin stands at the center of that conversation. Not only as a facility, but as an example. An example of how systems operate over time. How policies translate into lived experience. And how the meaning of a sentence can change when its timeline extends beyond expectation. The individuals within this system carry that experience with them. Not just during their time on death row, but in how they understand time, routine, and the system itself. Because long-term confinement does not exist in isolation. It shapes perspective. It influences thought. It becomes part of identity. And even when the system changes, those effects remain. This is what remains after the years pass. Not only the structure of the system, but the impact it has had. On individuals. On staff. On the broader understanding of how justice is applied. San Quentin, in this sense, is not only a place where sentences are held. It is a place where the consequences of those sentences become visible. Where time reveals what systems do over long periods. And where the difference between intention and reality can be seen clearly. Because in the end, the true cost of death row is not only measured in legal terms. It is measured in time. In years lived within a system that continues without resolution. In the psychological and human experience of waiting. And in the lasting impact of that experience. What remains is not just the sentence. It is everything that comes with it. The system beyond the walls. San Quentin is often seen as the endpoint. A place where the most serious sentences are carried out. A place that represents the final stage of the justice process. But in reality, it is not the end. It is part of something much larger. Because what happens inside San Quentin is shaped by systems that exist far beyond its walls. Courts, laws, policies, and public decisions all converge here, but they begin elsewhere. And understanding death row requires looking at those connections. The legal process that leads to San Quentin starts long before an individual arrives. Investigations. Trials. Sentencing. Each step involves different parts of the justice system. And each step contributes to the outcome that eventually places someone on death row. But even after sentencing, the system does not stop. It expands. Appeals move through higher courts. Legal arguments are reviewed. Decisions are examined again and again. According to publicly available information, this extended process is designed to ensure accuracy in cases involving the most serious penalty. It reflects a legal principle that emphasizes thorough review. But it also creates time. A significant amount of time. And that time connects the inside of San Quentin to the outside world. Because while individuals remain in their cells, their cases continue to move through courtrooms, legal offices, and judicial systems. The prison and the courts operate in parallel. One holds individuals. The other processes their cases. And together, they form a system that extends across years. This connection means that what happens outside directly affects what happens inside. Changes in law can alter how cases are reviewed. Court decisions can influence timelines. Policy shifts can redefine how sentences are applied. San Quentin becomes the place where those external decisions are experienced. Not as abstract changes, but as real outcomes. A delay in court becomes more time inside. A policy shift becomes a change in expectation. A legal ruling becomes a shift in possibility. This relationship between inside and outside is one of the defining features of death row. It is not isolated. It is connected. Connected to systems that operate continuously, even when the physical environment remains unchanged. Public opinion also plays a role in shaping this system. Discussions about the death penalty, its use, and its future influence policy decisions. These discussions occur in legislatures, in courts, and in public forums. According to public records and reporting, California has seen ongoing debate about the role of capital punishment. Some support its continuation. Others advocate for its removal. And these perspectives influence how the system evolves. San Quentin reflects the outcome of those debates. Not immediately, but over time. As policies change, as legal standards evolve, and as public views shift, the system adapts. But that adaptation is gradual. Because large systems do not change quickly. They move through processes. Through decisions. Through layers of implementation. And during that time, daily life inside San Quentin continues. The same routines. The same structure. The same passage of time. This creates a gap between system-level change and individual experience. Changes may be happening at a broader level, but they are not always felt immediately inside the facility. For individuals on death row, this means living within a system that is both stable and evolving at the same time. Stable in its daily routines. Evolving in its broader direction. And this dual nature shapes how the system is experienced. Because while the environment may remain consistent, the meaning of that environment can change. The future becomes less certain. The purpose becomes less defined. And the connection between sentence and outcome becomes more complex. San Quentin, in this context, is not just a place of confinement. It is a point of intersection. Where legal systems, public policy, and human experience meet. Where decisions made far away are lived up close. and where the effects of those decisions unfold over time. The broader impact of this system extends beyond individuals on death row. It influences how justice is understood, how punishment is applied, and how society responds to the most serious crimes. Because the death penalty is not only a legal issue. It is a social one. It reflects values, priorities, and perspectives about accountability and fairness. And San Quentin becomes a visible part of that reflection. A place where abstract ideas take physical form. Where debates become lived experiences. And where the complexity of the system becomes clear. In the end, the story of death row is not contained within the prison. It extends outward. Into courtrooms. Into policies. Into public conversations. And as those external elements continue to evolve, the system inside San Quentin evolves with them. Not all at once. Not always clearly. But steadily. Because systems are not static. They change over time. And when they do, the places that exist within them, like San Quentin, change as well. Even if the walls remain the same. At San Quentin, everything comes back to one question. Not about a single case. Not about a single moment. But about the system itself. What is it trying to do? Because death row, at its core, is meant to represent the most final form of justice. A sentence that carries the greatest weight. A decision that is intended to be definitive. But over time, the reality has become more complex. The sentence is still given. The legal process still exists. The structure of the system remains in place. And yet, the outcome is no longer as immediate or as certain as it once was. Executions have been paused. Legal processes continue. Time extends. And within that extension, the meaning of the sentence changes. It becomes less about a single final act. And more about the experience that leads up to it. Years spent in a controlled environment. Years shaped by routine, uncertainty, and waiting. This raises a fundamental question. If a sentence is defined by its outcome, what happens when that outcome is delayed indefinitely? Does the sentence still mean the same thing? Or does its meaning shift, over time? San Quentin reflects this shift. It is still a place where death sentences are held. But it is also a place where those sentences are lived in a different way than originally intended. The legal system continues to operate with care and precision. According to publicly available information, the extensive review process in death penalty cases is designed to prevent error. Multiple layers of appeals ensure that decisions are examined thoroughly. This reflects a commitment to accuracy. But it also creates duration. And duration changes experience. Because when a process takes decades, the experience of that process becomes as significant as its outcome. Individuals on death row are not only defined by their cases. They are shaped by the years they spend within the system. The routines they follow. The environment they navigate. The way they experience time. And over those years, the system itself becomes part of their reality. Not just something that will decide their future. But something that defines their present. For staff, the system is experienced through responsibility. Maintaining order. Following procedures. Operating within a structure that requires consistency. But even within that structure, the passage of time is visible. The same environment. The same routines. The same long-term conditions. And within that, the system continues to operate. Day after day. Year after year. San Quentin becomes a place where continuity and change exist together. The structure remains. The routines continue. But the broader meaning of the system evolves. Public debate, legal developments, and policy decisions all influence how the death penalty is understood. According to public discussions, these conversations are ongoing. They involve questions about fairness, effectiveness, and the role of punishment in modern society. San Quentin is not separate from these discussions. It is part of them. Because it represents the real-world application of these ideas. Not in theory, but in practice. And in that practice, the system reveals its true nature. Not only what it intends to do, but what it actually becomes over time. This is the final measure. Not the sentence itself. Not the legal process alone. But the combined effect of both. How the system operates. How it is experienced. And how it changes over years. Because in the end, a system is not defined only by its rules. It is defined by its outcomes. And by the experiences it creates along the way. San Quentin shows that those experiences are not simple. They are shaped by time. By uncertainty. By the interaction between law and reality. And as long as the system continues to operate in this form, those experiences will continue as well. The sentence remains. The process continues. And the meaning evolves. Until one final question remains. Not about what has been done. But about what will be done next. Because the future of the system will determine what the sentence truly represents. Not only in law, but in life. This documentary is based on publicly available information and real-world accounts. Some details may be simplified for clarity.